Okay, everybody, video number 2, and we'll see how much input Bentley wants to give on this one. Hopefully not very much. So I talked through in the last video how to navigate the site if you don't have an account. This will just be some highlights on where we're at with the tree, what we found, and some updates moving forward. So you get to stare at my face for a little bit because, like the rest of the universe, this tree centers on me. Crazy how that works. Where we're at as far as some more research going on, and you can just look at this while I'm talking about it. When I joined the site, I found out, just through the different hints that the site gives and the different public trees that it gives me access to, that there were 2 users who had done a lot of contributing to the Hartman side of the family as far as information on individual people. So I messaged those 2 users, and one of them got back to me. Her name is Sue, and I can shoot you guys some emails she sent me if you want them. And but she lives in Plymouth Meeting, as it happens. And me, my mom, and Cheryl, and maybe 1 or 2 other people are going to go up and see her in a couple weeks and get some more information. She has troves of bits of information on the Hartmans, which is super cool because I didn't have a ton, but we did have enough to go off of to start. So I will start way back, further back, so that we can come back down to our time and have it make some sense here. So I'll zoom in because I know this is tough to see, but if you look right here, you see me down here in black highlighting around my face. Everything going up from here, obviously it's my tree, it's coming out from my person. On the left side here is the Peyton family. I've minimized that because for purposes of this video, you guys are going to be more interested in the Hartman side, and that's where I've also done most of the research and where there's been the most information to find. So I'm going to zoom back out, and then we'll dive into some individual people. So don't worry, you're not going to have to look and squint because it's not possible to see what level of what I'm showing you now. So if we go all the way back, as far back as we can reasonably find on the Hartman side, because when you get back into the 1600s, the information starts getting a little shaky and conflicting and incomplete, and there's just not as much information as there is now. There's not as many ways to verify it or check it against other sources. So as far back as we have any kind of information, and when I say we, I mean the information that was provided to me to begin with, and then the information I found on the site, and the information that other trees from people, Hartman family members, some of them, the information that they gathered and the research that they did. So we is not me and a group of historians. It is a group of people who put together this information that I'm just collecting here for our benefit. So here we have Christian Hartman. That's what it seems to be, is who he was. We're scrolling in here, 1722 to 1779. That is not a picture of him, as far as I know. He wasn't George Washington's right-hand man. According to the play, it was Alexander Hamilton, not Christian Hartman. But he was born in the United States, as far as I can tell. Let's click on this and see if I remember correctly. Nope, it was one of the 2 Hartmans I knew was going to be born in Germany. And it says this one was him, August 26th, 2 days off from my birthday, in, I'm not going to try to pronounce that, Biberach, Baden-Württemberg, Germany. Died in Mannheim, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania in 1779. So that's the first one we have. It looks like he was married twice. I don't know the details around that, but that's what we have. Then we go to his son, and this is where it starts to get a little bit stronger, and we figure out what we have. And it's Johannes Hartman, and a lot of times in these, I've seen Johannes as a name on the Hartman side, and it gets shortened to John. So if we see John, it could be a Johannes, or it could just be John, or it could be interchanged. This guy, and it's where the tree really starts to get interesting and more current. Johannes, it appears, and what I found out from Sue, one of the people who've done a lot of research on and Sue, who I mentioned in the beginning, is our 6th half cousin, or at least my 6th half cousin. 6 meaning 6 generations removed. We share Johannes, or John, so that means me, you guys, everybody, certainly who were born of a Hartman, if we're going to use biblical terminology here, or who is a Hartman. We are blood related to her through Johannes Hartman. And the reason we're half is because Anna B., it's Anna Barbara Ritter on the left, Johannes married, and she died in 1786. They had a few kids. We'll scroll down and see some of that. She died, and her sister, Maria, then married Johannes. They had some kids. Sue's family comes from Anna's Johannes kids. And our family comes from the Maria Johannes kids. So if we start scrolling down, and these little green things up here are hints that I can see, or anybody who would get an account can see, and it's cool stuff. These little minion head things up here, or whatever they are, from the Toy Story people, I forget what they're called, is a DNA thing. Me and my mom took the DNA test, and it connects us there. So we're 5.5 minutes into this video, and I'm going to try and keep it under 10 minutes so that I don't put you to sleep. If that's what you need, though, by all means, hit replay. We will scroll down here. We're looking at the map here. Here are Johannes's kids with Maria and with Anna. And if we scroll back over to here and go down the direct line, in this case directly to me, but also directly to you guys, we've got Solomon Hartman, one of Johannes's kids with Maria, which is our ancestor as well here. So Solomon Hartman, 1788, 1854. In these pictures on here, which you can't see really well, but that's fine. Sue is in these pictures. She took them at the family gravesite, as it happens, in Arntsville, Pennsylvania, which is near Gettysburg. I didn't know any of this stuff when, over the last 15 years, I've been very much into Civil War history. I've been to Gettysburg many times. I've been on tours, and one of the historians, or the historian for the Adams County Historical Society. Adams County is the county in which Gettysburg, Arntsville, Aspers, Cashtown, a few other towns you'll see if I do more of these videos, or if you guys go on a trip with me, where all of our family is from. He is the lead historian for that historical society. He worked with Sue to help her put together a history of her side of the family from around the Civil War before then, but she really put it together in a nice booklet. I can send it to you guys. It's really cool. So Solomon Hartman married Susanna Euler, and the Eulers are still around that area. There's an Euler Farms. My mom has been getting apple cider from the Euler orchard for years. The names out there just are really old names. The Hartmans are all over Arntsville and the Adams County history. So are the Eulers. So are a couple of the names, the Bushies, the Arnts, and so we'll see some more of them. So Solomon and Susanna have some kids, and Solomon Hartman has Solomon Jr., and then we're starting to get quite close to us. So Solomon Hartman, this is a colorized photo. I'll scroll in as much as I can so you can see a decent picture. And then, speaking of the Bushies, his wife's name's Sarah Bushy. So you can also see this below. It orients it to me, so it tells me that Solomon Hartman and Sarah are my third great-grandparents. And we'll see why that's the case as we go down here. Solomon, if you look at his dates, 1825 to 1899, was 36 years old at the time of the Civil War, and 38 years old at the time of the Battle of Gettysburg, and his farm was not far from there, so he certainly would have had some interactions with it. And I'm in the process of determining how much interaction he had. There's a lot of Solomon Hartmans as it happens, and I'm trying to figure out which one was his in a particular record that is interesting. But we keep going down, and that'll be for other videos. This is just going to give us an overview. Solomon and Sarah have Edgar Newton Hartman here, 1861 to 1933. He married Annie Rice. Here are some of his siblings: Wilmer Alva Hartman, Anna Hartman, Jane Hartman, Florence Hartman, George Hartman here, and his wife Susan, Agnes Hartman. They had a lot of kids. I assume still a product of the time when you were farmers. All of the Hartmans here were farmers, without exception as far as I can tell. I'm sure there's some that weren't, but I haven't found them yet. And to make sure you had some nice free labor, or at least as cheaper than you could pay for, and due to still not great infant mortality rates, you just had a bunch of kids. And the ones that survived, because there are a decent amount here who did not survive to adulthood, by our standards at least. So we'll keep going, but some interesting little tidbits here, or not so interesting, maybe just morbid. George Hartman here, his wife Susan, I don't know the particulars of their life, but they had a number of children, and right after she had twins, or I guess 6 years later, she committed suicide. She hung herself, and the news story in the paper, these papers had everything. George, his daughter found her, and George had to cut her down. So that certainly couldn't have not affected his life. I don't know anything else about him, but my goodness. We'll keep going here. That's quite a transition, which is a thing for me, I guess. We've got Wilmer Alva. He was a minister in Maryland, in Pittsburgh. He moved around. He died fairly young. He was in his 40s, and I forget the diagnosis, but it is in the death records, and if you want to see him, I can send him to you, or at least a picture, and I'll post some of these in the group me. But he died of some odd illness, something with his heart, but came on fairly suddenly. But back to Edgar, our direct descendant. So Edgar and Annie, the children of Solomon Jr., the grandchild, in Edgar's case, of Solomon Sr., and the great-grandchild of the person we started with, Christian, or Johannes, I'm sorry, and the great-great-grandchild of Christian. See how this stuff starts to pile up? We get down to Earl Pennington Hartman, who married Mary Alice Widener. And Earl, my great-grandfather, Mary, my great-grandmother, had Donald Earl Hartman, who married Elaine Greening. And then here we are to the present. Earl, I never met him. He died in 1971. Some of you did. Uncle Gary, we would be interested in hearing, Uncle Tom even, if he sees this, and what you guys remembered. My mom, I know Aunt Kathy have a few memories, but not a lot of information. He seemed like a quiet guy. One of the reasons he may have been quiet, his wife died when she was 45, and that obviously untimely death affected him in some way. I've got a ton of information from newspapers around Gettysburg, where he was born in that area and grew up until 1929, when he would have been 40, when he moved the family to Philadelphia. There's a ton of newspaper information on Earl, on Edgar, on Solomon, so many things. I've collected them in here and connected them to their individual pages. But I even found a thing, for example, that Mary was in a play, played the lead in a play somewhere around Gettysburg. I forget the name of the play, but she was playing the lead in that. And for a guy who's pretty quiet, his wife seemed pretty outgoing. Back up then, while we're talking about interesting tidbits, to Earl's father, Edgar. I've told some of you this, and I may have mentioned it to more than some of you. I may have put it in the group me. But he was on his way to his son, one of Earl's siblings, on the way to his house, and his car fell over on him. He got out. It was on a bit of an embankment, and I guess cars being what they were back then, it fell on him. He broke his pelvis. He had some bladder issues. He went to the hospital. The vehicle was unscathed, apparently. And when he died, 9 years later, at least one or two accounts in the paper attributed it to a illness or infirmities that just lingered after that accident. Back down to Earl, and also while we're on the grandparents, if you're my mom or one of her siblings, or in my case, great-grandparents, you see Earl and Mary here on the Hartman side, and then you see on Elaine Greening's side, her parents, Adolph and Ida Mae Seelhorst. Uncle Gary has tracked down a living relative of the Seelhorst way out in the Midwest. He's got all the information on that. We're working on talking with him. Super cool stuff, just almost out of nowhere. But let's keep going. I've got this video going on 13 minutes. I'm going to keep it. Let's try for under 20, which we can pull off. But we've got Donald and Elaine here, and then here we are down to us. There's my mom, and then there's a good chunk of you guys, Gary. We've got your spouses. We've got all the kids, all my cousins. We're all in here. Actually, Christopher Hartman is Uncle Tom, and Aunt Linda's kid is on answer. She took a DNA test, and we matched up on here, and so we'll see if he's still doing anything with that. But yeah, there we all are. There's tons more tidbits on here. The site gives a lot of information and hints so that I can track down more things on more people. I'm doing searches on different, wives of Hartmans and husbands who married in and their kids, and trying to piece together as much information as possible. The site's really cool because it gets smarter the more information that we can feed it that we know. So when we go to visit Sue, we're going to get as much that she has and take pictures of it and add it into the tree. Send you guys any cool information there. Anything you guys have would be welcome if you have it. I'll add it in, pictures to people's pages, but even more so, dates, names, all kinds of things like that. Anything factual in that way is super helpful. So again, we barely touched on anybody or any real details of them. I can click into people in other videos. Like for example, I'll click into Earl here just before we go, and I'll click on his profile, and then we'll zoom in a bit. There we go. That gives you a nice picture of Earl. Life story here. He was born in 1889 in Arntsville, October 18th. His father, Edgar, was 28. His mother, Annie, was 25. He married Mary on March 19th, 1914 in Floridale, Pennsylvania, which is right near Arntsville, on the way to Gettysburg. It was said in the paper that Mary was the enterprising or efficient postmistress of Floridale. So she worked, I assume, in the post office. And so she was an interesting. I'd love to know more about her. She was seemingly more out and about than the average woman who would have lived on a farm then would have been normally out and about the town. So yeah, don't know anything more about her, but she was certainly interesting, and she died quite young. And then he died at 81 in 1971 in Philadelphia, and of course some of you guys met him or saw him a few times. But this gives you all the listings of his family, his relatives. This is the entire write-up from Faith Tabernacle of when he moved to Philadelphia, and he talks at length in there. That's probably the most I've seen of anything of his own writing. So there's that. So many things in here. There's a picture of when he's older, which we talked about in the last video. But yeah, so this is a blast. I was getting to bed before midnight most nights. Now it's more like 2 a.m. because this is too good of an excuse to stay up, which I don't need many to begin with. So if you guys have any more info, you can send along, that's great. If you have any questions or things you want me to look into or bits of information I can send, I will. And you saw some of the posts in GroupMe. Some of these newspapers back in the day are unbelievably great. You know, the girls who were considered pretty, we're just going to take their word on it. They're dead now. Earl, as it happens, while we're on him, and I'm going to try to leave it off here, but it's all interesting stuff. When he moved to Philly in 1929, from essentially 1922 till then, it seems like he was trying to sell his farm. He was a farmer in Arntsville, and when I go out there, I know the one historian. I'm going to try and find out if we can find where his actual farm was, like the actual land now, and visit it. But most all of the Hartmans, who still live in the area, but all of our ancestors, Edgar, Solomon Jr., Solomon Sr., all are buried in Greenmount Cemetery in Arntsville, which is, as it happens, the same name as the cemetery in Northeast Philly, Greenmount Cemetery, where Donald, Elaine, our more recent Hartman relatives are buried. So crazy coincidence that it's the same name. Yeah, Earl was trying to sell his farm. So there's all these notices in the paper, public sale, a farm of 50 acres, more or less is what it says. And where it's situated, that it's got lots of, it's in the fruit belt is what it was called. Apparently that area of southern Pennsylvania is known for its apples and other orchards, which is what the Oilers were into. He's tried to sell all of his farm equipment. There's tons of things where he lists all of that multiple times. So I don't know if I assume he ended up selling it to somebody. And yeah, it's interesting. And I've posted some of the things where he's selling 2 fat hogs. He's selling eggs for hatching, all kinds of cool stuff like that. So at this point, it's just me rambling. So at 18 minutes and 35 seconds, we're going to wind it down. Thanks for hanging in there, guys. And Bentley behaved himself on this one. So hope you find this enjoyable, valuable, and maybe we'll do some more as we find some more information. Thanks.